Thank you for joining us on this special broadcast. When you speak to medical experts and you look at the last 1 month, 1.5 months and what India has had to go through vis-a-vis our battle against COVID-19, and one of the biggest lessons that we've learned, and to discuss the efforts, the lessons and the role that companies are playing today, India Inc., Corporate India. I have with me Mr. Chanakya Chowdhury, who is the Vice President of Corporate Services at Tata Steel. Mr. Chanakya, thank you for joining us here on Republic TV. You know, when
thanks for inviting me over.
Good to have you with us. So, one of the biggest takeaways of the last 1.5 months has been how India has been able to mobilize what we call Mission Oxygen. You've had big companies come in, you've had our forces flying out and carrying out operations, sorties from different parts of the world, Navy vessels bringing in oxygen from different parts of the world, and corporate giants and companies like yours have played a very, very big role, Tata Steel especially. Why don't you tell our viewers about how it all began as far as Tata Steel is concerned, and how much of oxygen have you now supplied and to how many cities in India?
Okay, so yes, you're right. The whole, I would say, headlines have been on the oxygen supply. The fact remains that every steel plant in the country, and ours, we have 3 of them, operating units, 1 in Jharkhand, Jamshedpur, and 2 in Odisha, Kalinganagar and Angul. And all of them have liquid oxygen facilities, generating facilities. So if I give you the number, typically in a 6 to 7 months horizon, if I see a horizon of possibly September 20 to May 21, if you look at that, I think somewhere in September we were supplying about 100 tons a day, and that was steady state supply. Steady state in the sense that this was a requirement outside our steel plant for various units. And today, as we speak, from 100 tons per day, it's now above 1,000 tons per day, kind of a supply. From Tata Steel, all 3 plants put together, and that's been a consistent supply. In the month of May, especially, we've been actually supplying more than 1,000 a day. And if I look at the quantum, I would restrict myself from April onwards till now. I think we've done about more than 30,000 tons in totality. Exact numbers would be about 35,000 tons from 1st of April till, let's say, yesterday, 21st of May. So that's the kind of supply. On the cities it has gone to, many months back, I think starting from wave 1 itself, government had set up an empowered committee in Delhi, Government of India that is, and they had actually been taking up data for all the steel plants in terms of how much is the production of liquid oxygen, how much is the consumption, how much is the stocks available and stuff, and what is the kind of increase that can happen on the generation itself. And Government of India has allocated various states which will get supplies from various steel plants. So all our steel plants, which are 3 in number, kind of supply to 4 or 5 states from each of the plants. So if I talk about, let's say, Odisha, it goes to Odisha, West Bengal, it goes to Andhra, it goes to Telangana, it goes to Tamil Nadu, and so on and so forth. It also goes to Rajasthan and Delhi. And similarly, from Jamshedpur plant, we send it to Bihar, Jharkhand, obviously we are home state, plus Madhya Pradesh, Delhi, and so on and so forth. So Chhattisgarh. So I think these are the states allocated, and these are the places where it has been.
You know, Mr. Chanakya, one of the experts that we were speaking to a few days back, I think it was Dr. Devi Shetty, and he said no other country could have pulled off what India has done as far as the oxygen operation is concerned. The way we mobilized every key resource that we had that could produce and transport this oxygen. And we were looking at some of the pictures of the steel plant in Jamshedpur and how liquid medical oxygen is produced, transported and taken to the different cities and states. Why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about what the process involves and why it's such a big operation? Yeah.
No, as I started by saying that liquid oxygen plants are a part and parcel of operations of steel plants. So typically every integrated steel plant would have a kind of a liquid oxygen plant. So have we. Now the process is obviously it's a very, very technical process, but I'll try to break it down into simple steps. So the air is sucked from the atmosphere. That's where we get our air from in the whole process chain. Then it is cleaned up of all any dust particles through filters or anything which is not the right component to be there. It is then compressed to 6 bar, and then this is cooled. After the compressed air comes in, it is cooled, purified, and it is through the cooling process. And again, it is cleaned up of any water particles, any vapors, or CO2, carbon dioxide, hydrocarbons. And these are molecular sieves which are used to clean it up. Again, it is compressed further through booster A compressors, and it reaches a very close to a liquefaction stage, where then it goes through the heat exchanging process, and air is cooled down to minus 170 degrees. And then it again is passed through turbines, which we in normal terms call it a distillation process. And there you have distillation process as columns, and at minus 170 degrees, it starts going down the column. And when it's called the cold box process, where it's mostly liquid, a little bit of air, and through that, there's a small portion of nitrogen or argon, and because it has a different, I would say boiling point, a lower boiling point of minus 190, 180, it starts going up the column. So it is removed from there, and purified liquid oxygen goes down and can be removed from there. And the purity is as high as about 99.5 percentage. Now, from there, it is done, collected again at the bottom, and some portion of it is cooled again, where we want to take it back to an pure oxygen stage. That is what pure oxygen, air oxygen is used in the steel plants. And most of it is liquefied, which is put into tanks and then used for various purposes. It could be, mostly it is for medical oxygen, which is for human beings. And the air oxygen, which is again vaporized with the heat exchanging process, is used in the steel plants and some of the fabrication units, downstream units, etc., etc. So in short, that is the whole process of, I would say, generating the liquid oxygen. Now, the second part is obviously because there was a huge planning which was done from wave one onwards in terms of who has what capacity, how much is getting produced, what are the stocks available, how much do we need to use in our plants, and allocations were done by Government of India. So it all had connected dots. So there was not much thereafter to start the operations, so to speak. But yes, and there was also a discussion about how much more can be produced from the current units. And that also, I think, I must say that all the operating units across the steel plants have tried to produce more and more going forward, so that, more can be supplied as required.
Yeah. So how much of the infrastructure was already available, and how much did you have to set up / import to ensure that this operation oxygen is a success? For example, in the beginning, we didn't have enough cryogenic tankers for one. India had to import many of those tankers. So did you also as a company have had to import these cryogenic oxygen tankers?
So yes, what you're saying is right. The production and consumption centers are different. So there is a lead time between, or there is a distance that has to be covered from production to consumption points, and that's where the tankers and the trailers are required. And surely when the demand is at the peak, obviously India didn't have too many tankers to cater to everyone's demands. So that is where I think Government of India, the industry, they join hands, and Air Force, Navy ships. We as a group, Tata Group and Tata Steel, we started scouting for containers outside India, and till date we've imported about 40 of them. And once they come in, they again get purged and purified and checked for any hydrocarbon, and they're then put into use. And we are going to import another, I think, 20 of them. So we have visibility of about 60, and I'm sure there are other operators who are doing the same, and they get into the tracks after cleaning, etc. So that has helped, I would say, increase the containers within the country. But also, Government of India and the state governments together worked out the supply side, which is the logistics constraints which were coming in. Because there's as I was saying, let's say Jamshedpur plant, the containers have to come from a particular state and go back after filling. There's a lead time. So I think Government of India, when they started the oxygen on rails, that has helped because it cuts down the travel time. Secondly, the Air Force aircrafts were used in emergency for airlifting the empty containers from the consuming point to the closest airport to the generating. So let's say Ranchi Airport, Bhubaneswar Airport were getting empty containers, then they would drive down to the plant, fill it up, and then either go back by road or on trains. So that all has also helped in the process.
Yeah. And every time India is faced with such a situation, Tata Group has always stepped forward and has been one of the first to help not just the community, but your efforts have reached every corner of India. Tell us a little bit about that. We saw some of the medical facilities that the Tata Group was either operating or managing. How many, in times of COVID, tell us about Tata Steel's efforts and also the Tata Group's efforts in setting up medical infrastructure.
So, yeah, you're right. Actually, working with the community comes with our legacy as a group. So I think if we go back to our founder, Jamshedji Tata, the whole ethos, the value system, the thought processes came from the founding fathers, from him and thereafter the first chairman, Mr. Dorab Tata for Tata Steel and Tata Sons. And so community was never a separately taken up initiative. It was just a part and parcel of our daily routine in terms of engagement, in terms of, it's like if you have to continue production, you also have to engage with community. That's how the whole thing worked. So every time there is a need, we are always there. And I think the expectation of the community also has seen what we have done, and they also kind of expect us to deliver at the times when they really need it. So that's where it is. On the medical infrastructure, see, we as a company are operating in Jharkhand and Orissa. So we have raw material locations within Jharkhand, Orissa. We have 3 steel plants, as I said. So most of the places we do have our medical infrastructure, most of the places. However, that is not enough during the pandemic kind of a thing. So just to give you numbers, during the COVID wave 1 and even now, we are operating close to 2,000 beds on medical infrastructure, which includes the hospital beds, which includes the COVID care centers that we are operating. Some of the hospitals we have converted fully into COVID hospitals within Jharkhand and Odisha. And 2,000 beds across, out of which more than 10% will be with ventilator beds. And quite a few, I would say more than 50% or 60% will be with oxygen lines. Because this was also one of the learnings we took forward from wave 1, that at times we need more of oxygen lines and more of ventilator lines. So that's where we have done on the medical infrastructure. But I say medical infrastructure is not only hospitals and beds and ventilator. It's also about medicines. It's also about resources. So I must appreciate the kind of work that has been put in by the health workers, the medical staff, the paramedics. I think very, very selfless service given by all of them and still being given by all of them. But on the larger perspective, so, supply of testing kits, supply of oxygen cylinders, supply of, in the wave 1, there was a dire need of food packets because everything was under a lockdown. So our CSR team really got into the act directly with the community or along with the district administrations to not only create food packets, but also distribute to the people who really need it. So I think it all goes hand in hand the way we've done. even now, as we speak, from a Tata Group perspective, a lot of initiatives have been taken with regard to supply of oxygen concentrators, the tankers I've already spoken about, and hotels. Our Taj Hotel Group has actually converted many of their hotels into COVID health centers and COVID care centers. So I think every vertical of Tata Group is trying and has tried to help in the way best possible we can do, I would
Yeah,
say.
and most of the states that you operate out of, that is Tata Steel especially, Jharkhand, and we've seen Jharkhand has been situation is slightly better today than what it was a couple of weeks ago, and also Odisha. Now these are states where a lot of migrant population returned back from their respective cities and states. Now, tell us a little bit about the efforts, because we hear of some of the community efforts that the group has undertaken to ensure that there is last mile delivery. Tell us, one, a little bit about these efforts, and two, how many people have you directly impacted?
See, as a group, as I was mentioning, CSR or community engagement is a part and parcel of our daily routine. Let's put it that way. So, wave one, the requirements were very different. This wave, the requirements are pretty different. So, we have also kind of customized under our banner of Tata Steel Foundation. Uh, that's our foundation through which we do our community engagement programs. Now, in wave one, as you rightly said, there was a lot of migrant population. There was a lockdown. People were coming back. People had lost their lives. So we had listed out something called the 10-point program under the COVID care, and that program really did well, I would say, during the wave one. So it was not only about food packets, as I was mentioning. It was also about education, it was also about health, and it was also about volunteering service in terms of reaching out to people and engaging with them. And I remember during the wave one, there was a lot of discussion uh, happening in terms of how will people reach back. So we created a digital platform called Farishta, which is Farishta primarily, but our volunteers would reach out to them and what is the need they have and kind of give it to them. We also worked a lot with the local population, which lost their daily livelihood because there was a lockdown. They could not come to the cities or the smaller towns to give their daily produce of fruits and vegetables, and created digital platforms along with Swiggy and Zomato's, and got their produce picked up, got the orders through online service, and sent the money back to them. So that was done during the wave one quite a lot. However, if I talk about how many people we reached out, I would say in the wave one we had touched about 9.5 lakhs, close to I would say 10 lakhs, 1 million. But during the second wave now, the need is very different. The requirements are, I would say, very, very different than what they were in wave one. So from April onwards, we have reached out to about 3.5 lakh people till date, 3.5 lakh. But the interactions and interventions are very different. So I'll tell you, they are very, very interesting interventions right now, because some people are still being sent food packets. Like, for example, we had many people in Jharkhand who got hospitalized as a family. There were only a few people left at home who needed food. So our CSR team has reached out along with the district administration, made food packets, got them delivered, etc. But I think there were 2 or 3 initiatives which we have rolled out during this period, which have really been doing well. One is called Apno Ki Suno, and this is a service which we are giving out to a lot of our rural population, semi-urban population, trying to tell them, hearing them in terms of what they need. Secondly, also to convince them on vaccination. Convince them a lot more on vaccination in terms of what all needs to be done, how vaccines are good. When we, in our Tata Steel Foundation, we have team of doctors. Because, if I go and speak, I don't have the credentials, I don't have the background to talk about health as such. But if a doctor is speaking, it gives the credibility. So our doctors actually engage with them, kind of convince them in terms of how vaccination will help you and how can you register yourself. And we I thought got about a lot of about 10,000 registrations done through this Apno Ki Suno. And it is an ongoing initiative. The second, as I was mentioning, was on Farishta, which is still continuing. And through that, we are reaching out to people for whatever they need. And this is a voluntary service. So we've already clocked about 6,000 hours of volunteerism by our own employees in various locations. We reach out, and this is not restricted to Jharkhand or Odisha.
Yeah.
It is till date gone to about 7 states of the country. And the third initiative is through digital bridges, because there are a lot of people within the ecosystem who are not tech savvy, who do not have smartphones, who need help. They are convinced to go for vaccination, but they don't know how to register themselves on CoWIN, etc. So we've tried to help them to register through our digital bridges, and happy to say that through this helpline, we are able to till date register about 40,000 individuals who have then registered and hopefully will have got or will get their vaccinations.
Yeah.
So I think these are the three initiatives which we are taking forward. However, as a company, the other stuff like giving out oxygen cylinders, giving out oxygen concentrators, setting up more and more COVID care health facilities, giving out the testing kits, and helping the state governments. Especially Jharkhand needed some help in the medicines during the earlier period. So we used our relationship with some of the suppliers to help the state governments procure whatever they could. Moving forward, we are also trying to help out by setting facilities very close to our steel plants in all the 3 locations with air oxygen lines. And we are setting up close to about 1,000 to 1,500 beds across Jharkhand and Odisha, which are right now getting set up, and hopefully in the next month or so, those will be all operational. So that's the kind of initiative as a company we are taking and moving forward.
Yeah. Is there a vaccination program at Tata Steel?
Yeah, so the vaccination program, which started in January by the government, 16th of January, which we had also in parallel initiated for all our health workers and all frontline workers, and which was initially for 60 plus, then it was in the month of March converted into or added another vertical of 45 plus. So all the drives, whichever the government has rolled out, we have rolled out in all our locations, because as I said, we also have hospitals, and some of them have been along with the government, because initially we were picking up the medicines from the government, we were buying it out from the government. And from 1st April onwards, 45 plus have also been rolled out, and that's been also the initiative within our company. We set up centers, actually vaccination centers in all our plants itself. And now what has happened is from the middle of May, when the institutions have been told, the manufacturers of vaccines have been told to also supply something to private institutions. So we are doing 2-3 things. One is we have rolled out vaccination centers. If I talk about Jamshedpur, along with the government of Jharkhand, which are termed as the government vaccination centers, but our people are also getting vaccinated. Our medical staff is administering the whole thing. We have also tied up with some of the hospitals in various locations, like let's say NCR or in Mumbai, where our people are stationed, and there they are going and getting vaccinated. We are in direct touch with both the suppliers of vaccines in India. If we can procure the vaccines directly from them as a hospital, wherever we have registered hospitals, and hopefully that will also start operations as soon as the vaccines come directly to us. So there is surely a rollout of vaccinations across our operating locations, and we have been doing a lot of communication on 2-3 things for all our employees and community. One is on COVID behaviors. What is the relevant and the best behavior to be given during this time? Second is, what are the benefits of vaccinations? And third, motivating everyone to protect themselves against this virus and go and get vaccinated as and when they are eligible and their time is
Okay.
right. Yeah.
Finally, Mr. Chanakya, at a corporate and operational level, what are some of the changes that you've had to make as a company, and what are the learnings from the entire COVID-19 pandemic? I'm talking about both the first and the second wave.
See, some changes have already come in, and I think they will continue to come, continue to be there. Something called the COVID appropriate behavior. It's not only about wearing a mask and keeping yourself clean and hygienic and about sanitizations and all that. That will continue. That will continue. We've also made some structural changes in our company in terms of meetings, protocols for what all meetings need to be in person, what all need to be not in person, and we can actually do it on digital platforms, restrictions on travel. I think some of these things will continue to be there for some more time and for right reasons. At the operational level, as I started by saying that we had created something called the pods, which in different operating levels only kept a few people together, and doesn't mean that everyone will be working in one area. And so that if there is someone infected, that can be restricted to a smaller group rather than a larger spread. I mentioned about testing. So we have continued with our testing protocols for all our employees at all our locations, and we are reviewing those as well right now to see. Initially, we had, after wave 1, put it as once in 2 months, then increased it to once in 3 months, and now after this wave subsides, we are trying to review that to continue. I think the larger point post all this, one is as a company, what we will do at the operating level. I think everyone needs to get vaccinated as and when they are eligible, because the best way of protecting ourselves against the virus is to get vaccinated. That's what I hear from all the experts, and that should continue.
Yeah. Mr. Chanakya Chaudhary, thank you for speaking to Republic TV, and thank you for all the efforts that the Tata Steel and the Tata Group as a whole has put into this effort in the battle against COVID-19. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and hope you all are safe and healthy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.